So if you can believe it, now, you choose now to start eating. A little over a month ago, I started seeing videos pop up online for a Retroid Pocket 2. It's a gaming handheld, and I got really excited because several months ago, I ordered from AliExpress the Retroid Pocket 1. And after about 4 weeks and tracking the shipping, it wound up in San Francisco and then apparently vanished into the ether. The tracking number disappeared. I have no idea where it went. So I worked through AliExpress, got my refund back, and decided, you know what, that's a sign. I don't need that little system. And then this thing started popping up. And finally, after 33 days, it's here. So, not only am I annoyed with the amount of shipping it took, but the amount of time that it took to get here. But the packaging's pretty beat up. So, let's do an unboxing. Let's open this up and let's see what the Retroid Pocket 2 has to offer in today's episode of Don't Burn the House Down. It smells like COVID. Alright, let's finally open this thing. Goodbye packaging. Alright, there it is. The Retroid Pocket 2. It is about freaking time. See, what else did I get? Oh yeah, I ordered the case. So they shipped the case with it as well. Nice little carrying case. It's pretty cool. And this was my free gift from being patient. That's what they said through customer service. This is a mini HDMI to HDMI cable. Pretty cool. And looks like a USB to USB Type-C Retroid adapter dongle. Alright, let's open up the white box, shall we? Sorry. You know, I gotta say, I really like the attention to detail that they put on this little case. It actually has the Retroid logo on the zippers. And the color, I think, actually matches what would be the yellow color of the Retroid. So, I just think that's pretty cool. This case is actually designed for the Retroid Pocket 2. Got a nice little strap to hold it in, and then a little spot up here to house your cables, charger, and whatnot. So that's pretty cool. I think that was 20 bucks to spring for that, so definitely gonna be worth it. There it is. So that is a screen protector. It's definitely in the plastic here. There we go. USB Type-C charging cable. Instructions. Wow, there it is. I gotta say, that thing feels really nice. Just the heft of it, the weight of it, the way that the triggers feel. Analog sticks feel really awesome. The right analog stick reminds me of a PSP analog stick and how it kind of slides as opposed to actually toggling like side to side. This one feels like a traditional analog stick, the movement in it. So it literally like bends side to side. I don't know if you can see that. So this analog actually moves side to side, whereas this one actually slides side to side. So it's definitely a dual analog. It's got dual analog sticks, but this one feels a lot more like a PSP. This one feels like a traditional analog that you'd be used to on a PlayStation or Xbox controller. Overall, initial impressions, really like it. Feels great. The weight is just about perfect. I'm going to get some ROMs put on here. We'll get her fired up, see how she goes. Before we do the ROMs, I'm actually going to do the screen protector first. I mean, they included it, so why wouldn't I? You know, working at Verizon, I've done about 1,000 screen protectors, and I can tell you the best thing that you can do for a screen protector is do it immediately. So pull off this protective film and then drop this on and be done. If you let any dust or anything settle in there underneath it, you're going to have yourself a bad time. So that's off. Take off the bottom layer, make sure you don't flip it over. Line it up. Bam. Look at that. Not a single bubble under there. Still got it. The dog starts to eat. The neighbor starts to mow his yard. You know, I'm just wondering if this thing isn't meant to be. But anyways, this is the Retroid. You have a spot on the bottom here for your micro SD card, headphone jack, home button, select, start, ABXY, kind of a traditional Nintendo layout there. On the top, you've got your power button, volume up and down rockers, your L1, LZ, R and RZ, which if you're a Nintendo fanatic, you'll understand those. If not, think of R1, R2 if you're PlayStation. And then over here you have your USB Type-C, that's your charging port, and a micro HDMI port. So let's turn it on for the very first time and hope she's got some battery. Look at that. So this is an Android device, much like an Android phone. It definitely takes its sweet time the first time you boot it up. But it finally did its full boot process here. There's some tips. So hold down the home button here, and that enables a mouse mode, which makes your joystick here work like a mouse. Don't notice me next time, it says. All right. Those are some tips and tricks for using the Android. So there it is. So here's your center button. If you're used to Android phones, you're probably pretty used to how these work. Center button. Here are all of your installed apps. It's like Moopin 64 Plus. Dig is on here. You got a browser, calculator, calendar, Classic Boy, Flycast, several different things on here. So I'm gonna have to figure out. Oh, there we go. Use the D-pad to go down on the screen here. RetroArch, if you're used to any emulation, you're familiar with that. And then the Google Play Store and the settings. So I'm going to get this thing connected to my Wi-Fi here. I got the Wi-Fi hooked up and I got done adding in my Gmail credentials. And I've got to say, it definitely takes some getting used to get this this little mouse and clicking through stuff on here. You're used to a phone where you're able to touch on the screen. This is not a touch screen, so you're not able to just punch through the keyboard on there. So you're literally going, you know, one letter, hit A, next letter A on the keyboard. So it's definitely not the easiest thing to do, but obviously this isn't a phone. It's meant to be a gaming little console. So that's all we're worried about. So right now I'm doing some app updates, and then we'll jump into some gameplay and see how she runs. So I've mentioned on this channel several times now that if I make a mistake, I'm going to fess up to it so that you can learn from my mistakes. And once again, I made a pretty big boo-boo. And here's what I did. When this bad boy shipped, it came with a 32 gigabyte micro SD card right down here in the bottom. And I immediately thought, well, hey, let me pop that card out and load up a bunch of my ROMs on there without even looking at anything yet. Well, the problem is this 32 gigabyte version of the Retroid Pocket 2 actually comes preloaded with thousands of ROMs from the factory, from the company here. I didn't know that. So when I started loading my stuff onto the SD card, I was like, wow, there's no room on this SD card. So I wiped it. And in doing so, I wiped out the designated store, that the Retroid Pocket store, all the games that were included on here, as well as some of the software needed to run the dual boot option of this device. So I went scrambling onto Reddit, and I found a very kind person that was willing to take his SD card, copy all the files minus the games, and dump them onto a zip or into a zip folder, and then he uploaded them to Google Drive where I was able to download them. So I got the functionality back. The problem is, in that dual boot option of the Retroid Pocket, which is actually called the Retroid app, I lost all those games, and I'm unable to load my ROMs into that partition, into the Retroid operating system. And that's a big deal because of two things, and let me show you those now. So reason number one is, once I loaded my ROMs onto here, I had to get the designated emulators to run them. Now, the Retroid Pocket 2 comes with several different emulators, one of which was a Moopin 64 variant, which I moronically deleted that as well. So feel free to yell at me. What I was left with was N64oid, which runs okay on certain ROMs, but on a lot of them it doesn't. And it doesn't actually allow you to remap your controller that makes use of the stick over here for like in your C button. So for example, if you're using this as an N64 controller, what you'd want is this to be your analog stick, this to be like A and B, or A and B, however you want it. And then you would map your C buttons up, down, left, and right over to this analog stick. Well, N64oid, that guy right there, there it is, that is unable to recognize this stick. So it's kind of worthless in that regard. So I had to go back and re-download the Mupen 64 variant that came on here to begin with, and it's a tough thing to use. If you are very comfortable working in emulation, and you're okay with switching cores, mapping buttons, if you know how to do all that stuff, then this thing is fantastic for that. If you just want something that you can pick up and play without having to dig through all that stuff, maybe you just want to try to relive that Game Boy experience that you had when you were a kid, this thing is also fantastic for that. However, you're probably going to want to live in the actual Retroid app itself. And so to get there, because this is not a touchscreen, you hold down the home button, which brings up a cursor, and then your left analog stick kind of becomes your like your mouse. So you would go into your settings here, you go down, and then you'd go into Retroid. And this will ask you, do you want to reboot into the Retroid Pocket system? To which you say yes. Now, before we go back into there, I want to show you, if I want to play Nintendo games, I have to go into NESoid. If I want to play Super Nintendo games, I have to go to SNES EX+. If I want to play Nintendo 64, I have to go into EMU Pro. If I want to play PSP, I have to go into PSP, PPS, whatever the hell that is. There's a lot of letters in there. If I want to play Game Boy games, I have to go into a lot of different things. So that's what makes the Android side of this really nice, is that I've got the ability to put on, for example, let's see if I can focus the camera here. It's not. There we go. Drastic. So I've got Drastic on here, which is hands down the best Nintendo DS emulator you can buy. I also have VGBA Next, which is probably the best Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color emulator on the planet. So between Drastic and VBGA, I can play all of my Nintendo handheld games aside from the Switch. NESoid plays Nintendo, SNES plays Super Nintendo, and N64oid plays Nintendo 64, PPSS, PP, whatever plays PSP games. And then if you want to play Dreamcast, it does come with Flycast, and then Classic Boy is a bit of a front end that's supposed to tie them all together. It doesn't do a great job doing that. Flycast, you can tweak the heck out of it, and you can get some Dreamcast games to run okay, but it's not great. So buy this handheld because you want Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Master System, and a lot of N64 functionality. But if you're not comfortable tweaking this thing like crazy, then stay out of the Android partition. Now, what you're going to give up if you go into the Retroid partition is you're going to give up the ability to use Drastic, which means no more Nintendo DS games, and you're also going to give up some Flycast functionality, which means your Dreamcast might not run as well. You're also going to be limited on your N64 playability because you're not going to be able to switch the cores that run inside these emulators. I'm a pretty techie guy, and in all honesty, I am starting to really prefer the Retroid partition. Let me boot into this and I will show you exactly why, and then I'll show you the second reason on why you cannot wipe your SD card. This is the Retroid app, or the Retroid Pocket operating system. Now let me show you how this works. This has a compilation of all the games that are currently on the device that are within the Retroid Pocket side of the game. The problem with having my own ROMs on here is they do not show up in this interface. So the games that are in here, some of them came on the device and some of them were downloaded from the store. So if you go up to the top here, here's all You can sort by category, which means you can sort by system. So there's PlayStation, N64, Famicom, which is NES, Super Famicom, which is Super Nintendo, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy, so on and so forth. And here is Dreamcast in here as well. Now these emulators that this is running on, I'm not sure which ones they are. So if you like to tweak your emulators, you need to stay in the Android side. If you're okay with playing just whatever the Pocket decides that you should play for an emulator, then go into this side. I actually like this side because it's easy. You don't have to screw around. You don't have to mess around with all the settings and the tweaks and the yada yada yada. Now the problem with that is you're not going to have, like I said, your Nintendo DS functionality. Your Dreamcast is kind of hit and miss. And then I haven't seen any sort of Sega systems on this side. What you gain though, you can't use your own ROMs, like I said, but you do have access to holding down the home button and go into the game market. Here you have a download chart, the popular chart. Obviously this is broken English. Increasing popular chart and new game chart. Or you can go to search, which it gives you all these different games. You can just type in search. And let's just type in Sonic. From here, you can see there are several different Sonic games popping up. Sonic Adventure, Sonic 1, 2, yada yada. A lot of Sonic games on here that you can download. You just download them straight away. They show up on here and then you can play them on here. So that's kind of nifty. I have yet to run into a game that I've wanted to play on any of those basic systems that was not available on here. As long as you have Wi-Fi hooked up, you can jump on here and play. You can download any game you want and play it. I don't know if there's any legal issues there. I'll leave that up to the scholars. I have not personally downloaded any of those. I want to make sure all the ROMs that I use are the ones that I own. But that is a nice, neat function of this, is that it does have the game market. So you can't access your own ROMs from this side, but you can access that game market as well as everything that is preloaded on the device. So don't wipe that SD card, because there are several thousand games that you will be able to play in this side of the Retroid Pocket. If you delete all those, then you won't be able to. So let's just jump into Crazy Taxi here and see how it runs. Now I do know that Flycast on the Android side, like I said, it runs okay, maybe 25, 30 FPS. It doesn't run amazing by any means. Let me turn it down a little bit. But it's definitely playable. So let's see how it looks in the, I'll go to 50 hertz here, in the Retroid Pocket side.
Hey, it's time to make some crazy money. Are you ready? Here we go.
I can figure out how to go forward here. Well, if I can figure out how to actually, there we go. Apparently it's the left L2. So here's some audio breaks. I don't see an FPS counter on here, but you definitely hear some broken audio. Is this the part where I just say I've never played Crazy Taxi, so I'm not quite sure what I'm doing? But anyways, there we go. A little bit of broken audio, a little bit of issues there. Definitely playable, but again, I'm not going to buy this system just for that. The great thing about this, though, is when you're in the Retroid side, if you hit the home button, it gives you this: A to continue game, B to exit game. And that's pretty simple. If you are in different emulators, then you kind of have to figure out what it is that you need to do to jump out of the game, which can kind of be a bit of a pain in the butt. I'm not going to show you any Nintendo games on here, but I will say that the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, those games on here tend to run extremely, extremely well. And on the Android side, if you get into Drastic, those games run exceptionally well also. So buy this thing for the retro games, and if you find ways to tweak Flycast for Dreamcast or some of the N64 emulators, then those are kind of an added bonus. So in conclusion, do I like this device? Absolutely. I love this device, but you have to have the proper expectations of what it is and what it can do. I love the case. I love the attention to detail right here where it says Retroid. It's kind of blurred out, but it says Retroid actually on the zippers that you're holding. I love the way that it feels in the hand. I love the functionality of it. I'm not a fan of the way they did the dual analog sticks. Now, there's not a ton of games that use dual analogs anyways, unless you're playing some of the Android games, but it just, for me, makes a really different feeling having a true analog stick over here and then like a PSP rip-off analog stick over here. So that's my biggest gripe. My recommendation for this, if you are savvy with ROMs and with emulation and you're used to doing all that kind of stuff, then definitely pick this thing up. You're going to be able to work with it enough, go through the settings enough on some of the emulators that you'll probably be able to get Dreamcast running pretty well. PlayStation runs pretty well. You'll be able to get N64 running pretty well. If you're looking for something that you just want to pick up because you're a novice, you're kind of a rookie, then pick it up as well. But do have some tempered expectations, and you'll probably end up playing in the Retroid side of the operating system. That's going to give you the ability to download from the market. It's going to give you the ability to just jump right in and play games. But you are going to have a limited selection of games, and you're not going to be able to use your existing ROMs in the Retroid side of the operating system. So if you're super amateur or you're super advanced, this is probably the one for you. I am going to enjoy playing Super Nintendo games on it, Nintendo, some N64. Those are kind of my biggies. And then Drastic, the DS emulator, works fantastic. So that's kind of what I bought it for and what I'm going to stick to, and that's what it does really well. So make sure you have the right expectations of what you're getting into, but for 80 bucks, I don't think you can go wrong. I mean, it's 100 if you put the case in it. The battery life has been fantastic. I've gotten about 4.5 hours out of it before I need to charge it. USB Type-C, the screen is fantastic. It feels good. So definitely worth the money, and I would say pick it up. I'll put a link below. I don't get an affiliate link for this, so I don't get paid for it or whatever. But if you want to pick one up, the shipping times are kind of weird, but definitely pop in and grab one of them. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.